Agora nós, como de costume, passamos para o inglês, que é a língua a língua aqui da nossa convidada, na verdade, é francês, mas vamos fazer em inglês para facilitar, enfim, o desenvolvimento da conversa. So, following our series of dialogues here today, we have three collectors here. Now we have Catherine Petitgas, who is a collector based in London, has been collecting since the 90s, and has a very active investment in institutional practices and institutional work and support in particular. Here with the program of the collectors, we were in fact particularly interested in collectors that do have this institutional side to their practice as well, beyond the acquisition of works for their own private means and sources and collections. So I think this is something quite important, and Catherine is a wonderful example, and she'll speak about this as well. Thank you so much for coming here. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
And Bernardo Mosqueira is here as well with us. He is one of the curators of the Curatorial Lab, which is the other educational program that we do here in the context of the fair. Bernardo is a curator from Rio de Janeiro, and his exhibition is the fourth one, Hokey Pokey, in the expanded field, it is called. So, Catherine, please tell me a little bit about the beginning of your collection, how you started, how you came to collecting.
Mm-hmm. We started collecting, as I would call collecting, as opposed to simply buying art to decorate our walls. In 1997, I sort of retired from my previous life as a banker, partly under pressure from my banker's husband, who was fed up of being married with a ghost, I think, and put me under pressure to change lifestyle, which I agreed to do on the condition that I could indulge my passion for the art. So I think that was the deal, and that's how we started collecting more seriously from that time when I became more available.
And that's in 1997. You were already in London?
Yes, we were in London. I was in the city at the time. And I actually, because I was an analyst, so I was sort of used of taking things rather more intellectually. I applied that approach to the art. And so I decided to go back to school, first to study modern art at Christie's. So I did a diploma course at Christie's. And I caught the bug of studying and decided to carry on, and I then went on to do a master's and MA at the Courtauld Institute in London.
At the Courtauld?
At the Courtauld, yes.
Which is one of the best institutes of art history in the world, no?
Probably. At least a very serious and rigorous institution.
Yeah. So yes, in fact, we were speaking with João Carlos earlier about the access of information, which I feel is very important for collecting practices. And I feel that often today, with the immediacy of the art fair and taking decisions very quickly, young collectors often do not have access to information as João Carlos, for example, was talking how he had relationships with artists, and you're telling me that you actually went back to school to pursue that. Do you feel that this has changed very much from then to now?
In what sense?
The access of information, the more well-informed and educated collectors, for example?
Well, I think yes. I think people realize that you can either be a follower or a trendsetter. And if you're a follower and if you try to chase works, it's quite likely that it's not going to be a very enjoyable experience of collecting. So if you want to be a bit ahead of the curve, understand a bit better what's happening, it's incredibly rewarding, I find, to make that investment in getting informed. You should know that when I graduated when I completed my master's, I decided to become a guide at the Tate. So I'm still a guide. So I'm a sort of militant in terms of education. I give public tours, so, free tours. Of course, I'm a docent, so it's a voluntary activity. I also give lectures on the exhibitions that take place at the Tate. I give special lectures for people who sometimes ask me to talk to their group. So I strongly believe in the need to get informed and to have a more sort of intellectual approach to collecting.
And that is at the Tate Modern in London that you have the...
Tate Modern, Tate Britain. I'm also a guide at Tate Britain, so Turner onwards, British art. And also on demand, I often give lectures in French, surprisingly.
And tell me a bit more about the collection. What you first started to collect in the 90s? Did you, for example, one thing that we often hear from collectors is that they first make certain mistakes and then they adjust and then they find the focus of the collection later on, which may change over the years as well and open up new channels. No, how did this work for you?
Well, I would say that there were really three defining factors in the way that we collected. I think certainly living in Mexico in the mid-80s was a defining moment for us. I think Mexico City probably was the largest city in the world for quite some time. 22 million people stuck in a sort of basin, pollution, the very rich, the very poor, the sort of the precarious, the luxurious. I think all of this was definitely a very important experience for us, this experience of the megalopolis. And I think that this has been really something that has marked our collection. The second factor was certainly the Tate. I think I can't say it enough. The Tate has played a major role in shaping the way we've approached art. I think I was mentioning earlier on that I've been a member of the Latin American Acquisitions Committee of the Tate since 2004, which is more or less when the committee started. So for about 8 years. It's a committee where we are about 42 people, on and off. Some people step in, step out, but we are 42. And so we gather funds and we buy, of course, works for the Tate. And within that there is a dialogue with the curators, but also a dialogue between people who who participate in the committee. So it's been an incredibly rich experience. And the third factor is probably a few mentors that I've had along the way. I think that probably one person who's played a big role has been Ivona Blazwick, who is the director of the Tate, of the Whitechapel, where I am now a trustee, and who is a friend and with whom I've had a dialogue. I think she forces me to formulate things, to become a bit more rigorous. I think a number of gallerists, and I think I can't say enough what role Luisa, in particular, Luisa Strina, has played in a sort of shaping my taste and also sort of explaining. I should say, of course, that our collection is almost exclusively Latin American. So
Ivona Blaswick, just to give some information to the audience, was at the Tate actually until maybe 2001 or 2002,
right, yes.
And then she moved to the Whitechapel Gallery in London, where you are also on the board, no?
Yes, she started becoming the director of the Whitechapel Gallery in 2001, and I joined the board there in 2008, so for about 4 years.
I would actually like to take this opportunity to have someone that has worked so closely with the Latin American Committee, and perhaps you can tell us more details about how the process is, what people are involved, because many are not familiar with it. We're not asking you to disclose any private information, but just let's see, you said there are 42 people, no? And it's led by
a Venezuelan lady who is called Tiki Atencio.
That's a collector,
I think yes, she's a Venezuelan collector. She's also on several boards, I think, in New York, and she's very active. And so I think she's brought together, it's a fairly democratic system where everyone pays a fixed amount to be a member of the board. And I know there are a few members here, so I have to watch what I'm saying. But anyway, so everyone pays the same amount, which is not horrendously high, I mean, by, collector standard. Then we gather the funds in order to buy works of art for the Tate. So I think within that group, I would say maybe half of the people on the group, this is really a complete approximation, but are there for the parties and for, the trips and the fun, and it's important, I
Socializing,
think the social life is also important. And half of the people are hardcore collectors who are really there for the debate and to help shape the collection and to give their feedback. Often there are people who are based in the countries. They know that when the Tate buys, it sets an example. So they are very anxious to see the right prices, the right editions, the right works. And so I think our chair would tend to like us to simply rubber stamp the decisions of the Tate, but at the end of the day, there are always very heated debates.
And how many? There are some Brazilians there, of course.
Yes.
Can you maybe tell us who they are? Or it's public. No, just so people know, because I'm sure people are wondering who are the Brazilians that are in the Tate committee.
Well, I think Pedro Barbosa is, of course, a very active member. Susana and Ricardo, I think, have been members. Luis Agosto, I think, has defected to another committee still within the Tate, the Middle East committee. Is that right? Traitor. But anyway, so I think that there are quite a few people here who would.
And you have 2 curators from the Tate and one a Latin American curator as well.
Yes. So when I joined, which was in 2004, it was I think the first year of our curator who was Mexican at the time, who was Cuauhtemoc Medina. Then he was followed by he had 2 tenures. Then he was followed by Julieta Gonzalez, who was our Latin American curator for 2 years. And now we've just appointed our new curator, who is José Roca, who curated the Bienal do Mercosul in Porto Alegre.
Yes,
so
of course.
They are always fairly high caliber curators.
And this is the most success. I mean, it's the founding one. It's the first committee, and it's set an example. I mean, it's quite successful committee in terms of the Tate structure, no?
I think it remains a sort of a blueprint of committee. I think, of course, it has been a blueprint for the Tate. And then there are a number of other committees that have followed, the Asia Pacific Acquisitions Committee, the MENAC, Middle East North Africa Acquisition Committee, the African Acquisitions Committee that is being set up at the moment, a Photography Acquisitions Committee. So within the Tate, it has played a major role. And it has also been a blueprint for other institutions. I think other institutions in Europe and elsewhere have also tried to put in place similar committees. So, for example, Pompidou America Latina in Paris. I'm a member of Pompidou America Latina, of course.
You're also a member of that.
Of course, I can't ignore my homeland. But also, for example, in Peru, Mali, with Juan Carlos Verme, who's been one of the founding members of the Tate Latin American Acquisitions Committee.
The Museo de Arte de Lima, no?
Exactly.
Yeah, the Mali.
He's set up a similar acquisitions committee, and I think similar things may be happening in Brazil, if I'm well informed. But I will leave you to discuss that.
And of course, for the collectors, it's also very interesting to be part of that, because you are in that committee to discuss acquisitions, works that are presented, some are not presented, but you have quite privileged information that a very strong, perhaps one of the strongest institutions in the world is acquiring and, of course, making that, giving some institutional recognition for the work of those artists, no?
Yes, I guess if you were in the financial market, you could say that we get insider information, and of course we have a sort of moral duty of confidentiality, and also of no conflict of interest. But I think what is more interesting is the debate you were talking about, being informed on collecting. And I think the curators have to make a case for the works that they want to buy, and so certainly we benefit a lot from hearing their case. You know, maybe we agree, maybe we don't, but at least we hear the case for the works that they believe are interesting. But remember that each institution, when they collect, have a very particular criteria. So they may not be your criteria as a private collector.
So the curator, this, for example, Jose Roca or Julieta Gonzalez or Cuauhtemoc Medina comes in with a number of maybe 10, 20 works, and then it's they make the case for each of the works, and then the committee votes. Is that how it works?
That's right. So the trick is that they always present more than we can buy. They always present, more than our budget can buy. So I think the logic there is to sort of create an incentive for people around the room to raise their hands, and it's almost invariably at every committee. One or two people will offer to buy the work for the Tate in addition to their annual contribution, or sometimes if we want to buy pieces that are too high for our budget, we spread them over a number of meetings. It means, so for example, we bought this marvelous Babel by Cildo Meireles.
Oh, the Cildo Meireles.
That's a magnificent institutional work that was way beyond the budget of the committee. So we had to spread that over three meetings.
You have 2 meetings a year?
2 meetings a year, one in London in June and one in Miami at Art Basel, where we also get a chance to pick up a work from the fair. So that's quite fun.
And continue on your involvement with the Tate. You're also involved with the Level 2 program, you were telling me now, a very interesting program that Level 2 gallery is the gallery opposite the bridge on the other side of the Tate, for those of you who have been there. And it used to be a project space, no? And now, since 5 years, there's a program there that you're funding. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes.
And your involvement with that?
I think this is a space that is really the space for emerging art within the Tate. It's really the space where the Tate engages with contemporary art. It's a project space, but somehow it's never been called a project space, except that now, actually, as of next week, it has been officially renamed project space. When 5 years ago, I was looking to support the Tate more actively. I mean, support the Tate financially more actively. My husband is also a trustee of the Tate, so I do all the work and he gets the credit, but never mind. And so we were looking to do a more interesting project for the Tate, and I contacted the director at the time, who was Vicente Todoli, and thought this was that this space could be maximized, and I offered to support it for 3 years, so that there could be a sort of visibility in programming. The program for this space is done by assistant curators. So initially it was a bit of a hit and miss. I think there were no coherence to the program. And at the same time, Sheena Wagstaff, who was the chief curator of the Tate, also has an interest in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, in the whole region. I was very interested in Gasworks. Maybe we can talk about it later. It's a network of artist-run spaces around emerging markets. And so little by little, the program shaped up, and we decided to create this series of exchanges between artist-run centers around the world and the Tate. So there you have this big monster that is the Tate, dealing with tiny artist-run spaces, often with very little budget. but on a level basis, on par, because it's all within that little space. It's quite an original program, and I must say I feel very, it's been incredibly rewarding to have been able to help the ideas and the concept behind that space develop over the years.
And some of the spaces that they have been exchanged with, for example, are Salt in Istanbul, you mentioned?
The Salt in Istanbul. At the moment, it's Sala de Arte Populares Siqueiros in Saps in Mexico City. There's been Darat al-Funun out of Jordan, or Amman in Jordan. The first in the series was with Afghanistan, with the Aga Khan Foundation. It was a British photographer called John Burke. It just gives the taste this reach, within these areas that are difficult to deal with.
But with an emphasis in the margins more than Euro-America, for example.
That's right. It's really an emphasis on, I don't know how you want to call it.
The South.
Emerging, also up and coming, sort of non-Western countries.
And what about the collection itself? You said you started in '97. What about the periods of the work? Where are they coming from, and what time and what period?
I think probably our earliest work is, I know it's a work of 1941, and I'm buying, so I think, of course, I have work of April 2012. But we do have a fairly big chunk of the collection that is also modern.
I think we have some images. No, are we ready? Maybe we can look at some of the works.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, these are just some highlights from the collections, and I forgot my key in London. I'm sorry about that. So some of the works are actual works from the collection, and some are works that are similar, and I will mention when they are not exactly our works. Francis Alice, who is Belgian but based in Mexico, has been the key artist. In fact, he was the first the first serious artist we bought. In '97 at the Listen Gallery. This is a series that takes place on the Zócalo, in the main square in Mexico City, where he uses the flag pole as a sundial. And so I think he embodies very much the main strand of our collection, which is dealing with the urban environment, with the experience of living in the city. I think in many ways the sort of the chaotic, the found object, the flaneur. I think if we go to the next work, we have about 12 works by Francis Alice, and we have other works. This one is not in our collection, but we have other works of this series that is called The Last Clown. Actually, The Last Clown is Cuauhtemoc. This is a photograph of young Cuauhtemoc, and we also have a few of these works. And as part of this idea of the flaneur, sometimes I do make an exception and stray away from Latin America. And so Cadere, whom I'd seen at an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in Paris, and whom I became sort of more aware of, than whom I saw in the house of my friends in Mexico, Jose Curi and Monica Monsuto. I thought, but that works really well with Latin America, so here you go, little Cadere.
Working in the 70s. Most of these pieces are from the 70s.
That's right, and he would walk around with a stick like this and literally stick it in a corner or stick it as a sort of cowboy or as a sort of disturbance in other artist exhibitions. Another artist who's been working a lot with Mexico City, Melanie Smith. We also have about 10 works by her. I think we like to collect in depth. So when we buy a work from an artist, normally we buy more than one. And so Melanie Smith, we have quite a few works by. The Spiral City, this is another series that she did in Xilitla, which is a sculpture garden in the jungle in Mexico. And that's a link with surrealism, and that's why I enjoy this work. But It's also a tribute to Robert Smyson, so minimalism.
What is this? Is it what medium is this?
It's a mirror that is being carried through this tropical garden of concrete sculptures.
It's a video work.
There is a video. This is a still from the video, but it's a work of art, and it's a tribute to Robert Smyson, who had done a work with mirrors in the Yucatan in 1969. And so it's, Gabriel Orozco is also a sort of a major influence for our work. This is not the work we have, but we have a work that is very, very similar to this, so I'm showing this. We had seen, my husband and I, the 93 exhibition of Orozco at the MoMA in New York, and we're really sort of flabbergasted, and I think he's been an important part of the collection. So we have objects, we have photographs, we have paintings. Again, this is not my painting, but a painting of the similar series, green on white, trunks and troncos, sort of tree trunks. A lot of work by Orozco also, well, a lot, again, maybe 10 or something. The next one is part of the Gabriel Orozco group. This is Damian Ortega, another artist that we have several work by. This is the Torre Latinoamericana as a culbuto that could work. Always this experience of the city. Gabriel Curie, this is 3 arrested cloud. My version is on the floor, and it always gets people talking when they come to the house, which is interesting. The next work. Abraham Cruz Villegas, another Mexican artist who deals with found objects from the street. To create these sort of ephemeral, poetic structures. And so we have one sculpture a bit different from this, but along the same lines, and an installation that is blind. It's a self-portrait of papers that he paints white, and you can't see what is actually on the face to the wall. And they are all papers, flyers, photographs, all sorts of things that you receive, and they are self-portraits. And one of the satisfactions of having this work is that you can actually see what is on the other side. And yes, there are some porn images as well. But anyway, so, you know. Jorge Maki is an artist. We have several paper cutouts by maps, cut out of maps or cut out of newspapers. Also some photographs and some drawings by Jorge Maki. And then we move on to the Brazilians. I have to say that because we lived in Mexico, and that was how we really became interested. The collection started with more Mexicans, but now I think the Brazilians have taken over. So I think it's probably almost 2/3 of our works that are Brazilian. Alexandre Cunha, maybe we can go with, of course, that many of you know, with the plungers. Another artist who lives in London, Brazilian, whom I champion and whose work I love, who is Tonico Lemos Awad, with very poetic, ephemeral installations. The Seven Seas Night. This is a work that we have. Both of these work we do have, and a work that is quite prominent in our collection. Also along this idea of a recuperation of street junk, we have this series by Vic Muniz. They are the Aftermath series, Street Children from the Carnaval. It's an older series. It's a 98 from series.
98, actually exhibited here at the Biennale São Paulo, and on this very floor.
Yes, I really love this series. One artist that I've discovered recently and that I'm very, very fond of is the painter Luis Zerbini. These are, I think the one on the left is one we own, and we own several installations of slides. This is not the one we own, but they are pretty much along the same lines. And we own now 4, 5 works by him. And then perhaps Zerbini gives this connection with a sort of more geometric abstraction. And so we have also, as we were saying, some of the modernist masters, such as Oitisika, We have 3 works by Oitisika. I'm very proud of my couple of works by Ligia Clark. They are very small and probably irrelevant works, but it's a bicho and a superficie modulada, and I've put them one on top of the other, and I think they are very didactical, and so I'm trying to make the point of the 2-dimension moving to the 3 dimensions. So anyway, perhaps going back to the more contemporary work, Rivan is an artist that we have many works by, whom I've supported for some of her shows. She had a very interesting and very challenging exhibition at the South London Gallery in London.
Wonderful exhibition.
And this work is Ze Carioca is one of her interactive works, and it's a work.
This is a work. This is a work of that's in the collection. This
yes,
one. All
yes,
right. This is the actual work. Yeah. So how?
No, not this one. We have 2 of those pages, so it's not a 4. This is an installation that was at the Barbican.
Okay, so you don't have. It's not the work that's actually
no,
painted
I'm sorry,
on the wall.
I don't have. But
okay,
I have 2 of these pages, so it's more or less like this. And finally, perhaps going back to the modernity, my sort of pet artist at the moment. I'm sure you know it's not. It doesn't need me to be discovered, but I'm incredibly fond of Ivan Serpa, whom I've discovered recently. I think this whole teaching, the working in the psychiatric hospital, him teaching a whole generation of Oitisika and his peers makes him an artist that I love, and I think he makes a fantastic connection with the next work, which is perhaps our most proud work, our masterpiece, a work that we cherish. That is this Ferias de Verão by Beatriz Millases, a work of 2005 that we bought in London and that we are very fond of. And we have several other pieces by Beatriz, her book, Meubm, that is fantastic, and works on paper. I love the texture of these works. Even though they're on paper, they have all the different sort of almost tactile textures, which I love. And Janaina is also an artist that we've collected quite in depth. So we have I counted 11 works by Janaina. So and she's today at the Fortes Villas. And then I have a bit of a dirty secret, or I have a bit of a dark passion. I'm very, very fond of surrealism, and in particular of a woman who is called Leonora Carrington, whom you can see there, and she's often known as being the wife of, or the mistress of Max Ernst, whom she met in 1936 and fell in love. She eloped, aged 19. I met her when she was 92 years old.
Oh, you did.
She passed away last year, and so I've been collecting her work again in depth. I have 8 pieces by her.
Which are pieces from the 20s, 30s,
so the
40s?
1941 pieces we have is by her, and then going up to the 80s. She was still working until last year, but I don't think her latest works were as interesting. And as a result, I've collected more surrealist works. So pieces like Wilfredo Lam, this is my little idol that I like very much. And a lot of other works, Tamayo, Mata, a lot of Mexican, Remedios Varo, who was a friend of Leonora Carrington. But this is something that is a bit hidden away because it doesn't really fit with the rest, but it's a sort of dark passion.
How many works in the collection approximately you have?
About 350. I mean, we've been collecting for 15 years and we are not.
And quite exclusively Latin America, or do you open up certain exceptions every now and then?
At the moment, it's really mostly Latin America. As you saw that maybe Cadere here or another work there, but we are always tempted to, for example, there is a great connection between British constructivism and Brazilian constructivism. So I think that we are always sort of pulled towards that direction. And then every time we think, well, actually, that budget could get us so much in Latin America. And so far we haven't strayed.
You are quite actively sort of visiting fairs internationally, no? Can you tell us a little bit about this circuit? How do you see the current, I mean, we have an increasing scenario of art fairs today. No, I
Yes.
was speaking about the endless art fair. There's
Yes.
always an art fair opening every week somewhere.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Yes,
that?
I
What,
know
what are your views on?
Yes. You know, I find it stressful because, I mean, over the last week, people have been going to Freeze London, Sonamaco in Mexico, Hong Kong, here, and then they ask you, were you in Freeze? Were you there? Were you there? And you can't be everywhere. You know, it used to be that there were only a few sort of set rendezvous, which I enjoyed a lot. Basel in Basel, Art Basel in Basel, Art Basel in Miami, and maybe Freeze, of course, FIAC, which I also like going to, Arco once in a while. So I think my view of this is I like to dab in a little bit. So I've been to Sonamaco twice. I don't feel it's essential for me to go back there all the time. I have not been to, I'm not going to Hong Kong, but one day I have friends there, I will go. But so I pick and choose. In fact, I think you have to draw the line because you could spend your life traveling after fairs, and some people do, but
but biennials and exhibitions, you also, you're often here in Brazil, and you have a Brazilian project as well. No?
Yes. So biennials, I think I'm quite addicted to biennials, and so I think I've been coming to the Sao Paulo Biennial since 2004, without exception. So I think when you had the Biennale of the Void in 2008, I think I was amongst the very, very few collectors from abroad who came then. I know because I was there and they weren't. So, but also I'm quite addicted to the Havana Biennial. And so I've been known to be in Mexico City. It's 1 o'clock. Shall I go to Havana? There is a plane at 4. Yes! And I just jump on the plane and go to Havana. I've done it a few times. So now I'm wondering how I'm going to make this Havana Biennial, but I hope I can make it.
And your Brazilian project that you're working in?
Yes, so I think last summer I was totally unguarded, and I was contacted by a publisher who is quite addicted to publishing books. And he offered me to create a book of contemporary art from Brazil. And because of all I've said about Mexico, I always thought that the day anybody would ask me to do anything would be Mexico. But I thought, this is too good to turn down. Especially, as I told you, I've been, now the collection is very majority Brazilian. And so I considered the project. I did a lot more research, especially going to the Istanbul Biennial. Congratulations. To Lyon, to I don't know where I've been. I think I've traveled all over the place in the first term. And since January, working quite actively. I've been here also a few times. And working very hard with our project coordinator, Maria do Carmo Pontes, setting up a list of artists. We have 80 artists and 40 personalities. I think the originality of the program is that we are going to have museum directors, school directors, collectors, thinkers, some people we think are important, all Brazilian. And so this is
format,
this is what the book will look like. This is a sort of mock-up, and these are some of the spreads. I think quite colorful. I think it's a sort of it's a picture book. It's a book with lots of images. The idea is that people pick it up, see the images, they enjoy them, and they want to sort of know more. They can read the entry, they read the text, and then perhaps they get more involved. They perhaps start collecting. But it's really a tool of education and of promotion. Again, it's something that I do because I'm passionate about it. I'm not being paid to do it. It's really a completely mad project that has taken my life over.
It does. Yeah, those books.
You should have warned me that writing books was such a nightmare when I approached you some time ago. And this is what the other types of book that the publisher does that just came out. Sanctuary is a book of artists in their studios, 120 British artists in their studios.
Transglobe Publishing,
yes,
they have done books also on the Turkish contemporary art scene.
Russia,
and Middle East as well. There's
that's
the Middle
right.
East, no?
Middle East, Turkey, Iran, and Russia, and Brazil will be the number 5. There will be 10 in the series in total. And we are expected to launch it in September at Art Rio.
I would like to give the opportunity for some of those. Bernardo, would you like to?
Yeah, you've said you are in the board of Gasworks, right?
Yes.
So I'd like to know a little bit more about the Triangle Network.
Yes. Yes. So Gasworks is a rather small institution that is based in London. It has a small exhibition space, and it has about 13 artist studios and a residency program where they invite artists for 3 months to live in London and do a residency there. And actually, they've had a very good eye, and amongst the artists whom they've had over the past 2 years are people like Jonatas de Andrade, Cynthia Marcele, Tamar Guimarães, whom I supported for one of her shows there.
Renata Lucas.
Tatiana Blas is going to be doing an exhibition. Gabriel Sierra was in residency there for. If you look at the roster of artists they've had, it's quite impressive. And this is, just the area we know best, Latin America. If you look at India or China, you will have the same sort of depth. The reason for that is that Gasworks is the tip of the pyramid of a network, as you say, called Triangle Network, that is a network of artist-run spaces. So very small spaces, and so you really get, the information from the ground, from the artists who are there, and this is why I think they managed to promote or to select such a prestigious list of artists. I think Cynthia Marcel, since the Gasworks residency, has gone on to have a fantastic career in just a year, I think, and that's just one example. So. And I've become a board member of Gasworks at the end of last year with a Brazilian artist who is Alexandre da Cunha. So I think we are keeping each other company in this new board, but it's a very exciting project. Our chair is David Elliott, who I think is
And in terms of exhibitions of the collection, you have not had any, no? But you told me that you're also loaning a lot of the work, support, because we know how difficult it is often, to loan. There's quite a lot of work into loaning a piece for international exhibitions. So you also...
Yes, it's amazing that there should be such a tedious part to art. But so we try to loan every time we are asked to. I think my next goal, I think we now have a very well-catalogued list of works, and my next goal is to have a website with perhaps a restricted access, but so that people can know exactly what we have and perhaps borrow pieces that maybe they don't know that we have at this stage. Yes, I think that's honest.
What suggestions would you give for a young collector today that wants to start buying works?
That's a big question. I think,
homework.
Yes, I think if I take our sort of approach, I think it's probably safer to start buying smaller pieces. You not start by buying the $1 million piece, because I think this is perhaps going to be dangerous. I think it's better to buy works by young artists. This is how we've done it, and little by little go to the source. who are the
source
heroes, the source of the artist, who are these artist heroes, and maybe from then on perhaps add more substantial pieces, or then have the courage to buy bigger pieces by these artists, maybe installations, works that are more courageous. But start small, get to know the artist, do some homework, go to the talks, go to the fairs, to the biennials, because it's also incredibly rewarding and I think a lot of fun. And I think that's probably how I would, and also support the institutions. I think, as I told you, for us, being part of the TATE, the Latin American Acquisitions Committee, has really helped shape our collection. So I think you get a lot from supporting the institutions.
Do we have any other questions? Any questions from the audience? And what is the future of the collection? How do you see the next years?
I hope growing still. I hope also buying more ambitious works that are perhaps on a larger scale, and landing those works. I don't see a private foundation, or I think I prefer
permanently expanding storage.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Catherine. Obrigado, Bernardo. Obrigado a todos.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Wonderful example for us.